moments in history where you find yourself asking, how can such a mighty person fall from power so completely? And in the case of the French royal family, queens are not spared. And no, I'm not talking about Marie Antoinette. I am talking about the other Marie, Marie de Médicis. She had tried to overthrow the most powerful man in France, Cardinal Richelieu, and failed. Spectacularly. But what happens after you lose everything and still refuse to go down quietly into the night? She wanted revenge. But what she got was a one-way ticket to obscurity, all thanks to a trap she never saw coming. October 11th, 1630. For Marie de Médicis, it was the sort of day she woke up feeling like she was in heaven and then plummeted straight to hell. The night before, she had celebrated with her allies, bishops, courtiers, all the usual suspects. They thought they finally convinced the king, Louis XIII, to dismiss Cardinal Richelieu, and they toasted their victory. But the next morning, Marie found out that every single one of those allies were hauled off, arrested for treason. And naturally, she stormed to her son Louis XIII in a fury and demanded explanations. But the usually wishy-washy Louis was uncharacteristically firm that morning, and he told his mother with all the emotional warmth of a taxman in an audit, "Mother, stop this at once. Make peace with Cardinal Richelieu. That is the only way to save yourself." Marie froze. Her son's icy words hit harder than any palace intrigue. Marie stood there stunned for a few seconds, but her anger flared up again. "How can my own son betray me like this?" she cried, with tears, accusations, and a sort of dramatic tantrum that would have impressed even the most hardened Parisian stage actor. But Louis did not budge. He repeated again and again, "You must acknowledge Richelieu's authority." At last, Marie's face hardened. She saw that nothing she could say would change him. She walked to the door, turned sharply, and pronounced, "Even if the earth swallowed me whole, I will never serve that devil Richelieu. You do not know that man's true nature. One day he will rule over you." With that, she left. When the dust settled, Louis called Richelieu in for a council. They discussed the situation, but there was, frankly, no clever solution. All they could do was wait and see how Marie reacted next. And here you wonder, what if Marie had been a little more flexible? What if she had acted with a little patience and a touch of strategy? What if she was more like the other French queen from the Medici family, Catherine de Médicis? After all, the situation was not hopeless. Louis XIII had no children yet. The next heir was his brother Gaston, Marie's other son, and a lot more obedient. And Louis was not the healthiest man in Europe either. After all, he had just survived serious illness at the time. There was always the possibility that he might suffer another, more fatal illness. And as gruesome as it sounded for a mother to hope for her son's death, Marie might return to power if she simply kept calm, lay low, and allowed time to do its work. But Marie did not think that way. Long-term strategy was not her strong suit. She was emotional and impatient. So instead of waiting, she tried to gather allies again. But everyone close to her had already been arrested for treason. And when the Queen Mother sends a message saying, "Come join my new political movement," most sensible people prefer to be out of town, preferably under an alias. Louis and Richelieu watched all this. They thought she would calm down given enough time. But no, she was not that kind of person. So they decided that they could not leave Marie loose in Paris to continue her scheming any longer. The Queen Mother needs a change of scenery, preferably one with locks. So they sent her to Compiègne, a royal hunting lodge northeast of Paris. Marie protested, of course. She always protested, but protests do not move royal guards, and she was more or less delivered to Compiègne like a very expensive and very angry package. Of course, this was not her first confinement. 13 years earlier, when her son Louis XIII was only 16, he had staged a palace coup with the captain of his guards, Charles d'Arbert, against her, and the chief minister and her favorite, Concino Concini. That ended with Concini assassinated, and Marie was shipped off to Blois. She was in her early 40s then. Now once again she was locked up by her own child. Compiègne was far from Paris, on the road to modern-day Belgium. The great palace that stands there today came much later during the time of Louis XV. In Marie's time, it was a more modest hunting residence. The guards kept the place sealed tight. Marie found the life there suffocating. Her only solace was horseback riding. She had loved horses since childhood, and she still loved them. Unfortunately for the horses, she was older and much heavier. The stable masters had to just helplessly watch the perfectly healthy horses going out with Marie in the morning and coming back walking like they are reconsidering their life choices. Richelieu, in the meantime, did not believe for a minute that Marie de Médicis would simply be happy riding horses. He watched Marie at Compiègne the way a zookeeper watches a clever tiger, carefully from a safe distance, and with the sense that the beast is already planning something unpleasant. And of course, Marie did not disappoint. She kept in steady contact with Gaston, Duke of Orleans, Louis XIII's younger brother. She also reached out farther, writing to Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, asking her Habsburg relatives to send troops to come fetch her. But Madrid and Vienna had no appetite for a grand rescue operation. Both were up to their necks in the 30 Years' War. Launching a side quest to save one exasperated Queen Mother would have been hard to justify. So Marie turned next to the people who might feel more obligated to help her, her own daughters. She had 2 sons, Louis and Gaston, and 3 surviving daughters. Elizabeth, married to Felipe IV of Spain, Christine, who is now Duchess of Savoy, and the youngest, Henriette Marie, married to Charles I of England. No help would come from Savoy. The French crown and Savoy were tied together, and Christine would not risk angering her brother. That left Spain and England, both conveniently France's rivals. Marie thought her daughters might persuade Felipe or Charles to intervene. But the days dragged on. Compiègne grew stifling. Marie felt the walls closing in. She needed action. And she had escaped confinement once before, famously slipping out of Blois years earlier and humiliating Louis with her triumphant return. If she had done it once, she could surely do it again. The trouble was Richelieu. He had the entire France in a tight grip. This time, she couldn't find a place in France that she can use as her base for combat without alerting Richelieu's spies. So Marie began to dream of slipping across the border into the Spanish Netherlands, today's Belgium. At that time, the governor of the Spanish Netherlands was Isabella Clara Eugenia, a woman known for her intelligence and steady rule, and also an Habsburg relative. Marie believed Isabella would shelter her. She began planning in earnest. Routes, horses, trusted messengers, all very exciting, except for one rather important obstacle, the royal guards at Compiègne. They watched the place as if Marie were planning to sprout wings at any moment. Getting past them and reaching the border was almost laughably impossible. But then, miracle of miracles, something extraordinary happened. One morning, the guards simply packed up and left. Apparently, Paris had called them away. Marie, bewildered and delighted, rushed to prepare for her flight. This was the chance of a lifetime. There would not be another like it. This was now July of 1631, a hot summer, and Marie hurried to the small town of Étoigne near the Belgian border. And from there she sent urgent messages to Isabella Clara Eugenia, pleading for help. And amazingly, everything went smoothly. Almost too smoothly. And she was in Brussels in no time. What Marie did not know was that Richelieu himself had orchestrated this escape. Richelieu had intercepted all correspondences in and out of Compiègne. He found out that Marie planned to flee to the Spanish Netherlands. His solution? Let her go. Why? As the Queen Mother, Marie had been receiving a generous pension from the king, and that pension gave her the means to gather followers and fund her plots for rebellions. But if she crossed into the Spanish Netherlands, she would be in effect an exile in enemy territory, and her pension could be revoked, and without funds, her power would vanish. She would become a burden, a royal with nothing to leverage. Without money, she couldn't really do too much harm, so he persuaded Louis to let her escape. Marie, on the other hand, never suspected this particular trap. She eagerly crossed the border, thinking she was finally taking the initiative. It was only when Richelieu promptly cut off her pension, Marie realized that she had walked straight into the trap. Stripped of her wealth, and with her powerful supporters in France now in prison or dead, her status and influence vanished almost overnight. Even so, Isabella Clara treated her as an honored guest, at least formally. So in the Spanish Netherlands, Marie was able to stay in relative comfort and communicate with her remaining supporters in France to plot against Richelieu. Yet, somehow, anyone associated with her quickly found themselves arrested or punished. Marie kept trying, though. She repeatedly approached Isabella Clara Eugenia with pleas. Please help me overthrow my son. And each time, Isabella would diplomatically deflect. Now is not the right time. This went on for years. Eventually, Isabella lost patience. One day, she spoke plainly. Marie, I cannot help you. There is only one path left. Reconcile with Louis. Marie's face hardened. She had relied on her sister-like ally, but now received a blunt reality check. Did she follow this advice? No. But one thing was clear. She was no longer welcomed in Isabella's court. She immediately turned to her youngest daughter, Henriette Marie, or now Henrietta Maria, Queen of England. Henrietta and her husband, Charles I, did not turn her away. They provided a residence near London and allowed her some comfort. Now you would think Marie got the message by this time, but no. She constantly tried to stir up conflict with France, causing Charles and Henrietta Maria considerable stress. Her presence was becoming more and more inconvenient. But it wasn't like Marie had anywhere else to go. By this point, Marie had very little options left. But then, one unexpected place extended an invitation. Not the Spanish Netherlands, but the Dutch Republic, which had recently declared independence and was standing up to Spain. Marie was by this time in no position to refuse any place that wants her, so she ended up in Amsterdam. But why did the Dutch Republic invite her? There was serious political calculation behind it. The young Dutch Republic desperately needed recognition from other European powers. But any nation willing to engage with the Dutch would risk angering Spain. Marie, a French queen, even though she was practically in exile, presented a perfect opportunity. Hosting her would signal legitimacy without directly antagonizing too many powers. Her arrival in Amsterdam was staged with near imperial grandeur. Marie was delighted. Who wouldn't be, after years of uncertainty? Yet, in doing so, she had unintentionally betrayed Spain and quite likely stabbed Isabella Clara Eugenia, the Spanish governor, in the back. And at first, the Dutch Republic greeted her warmly. But the hospitality had a limit. Once the grand welcome was over, so too was her usefulness. Marie again found herself stranded like a luggage left in a wrong airport. The person who invited this once mighty queen in her final years was not any European court or her Habsburg or Medici relatives. It was an old friend, a once lowly painter she first met way back in her sister's palace in Mantua, and the same painter who attended her wedding, Peter Paul Rubens. Marie had been one of his most important patrons, and he genuinely valued her. And now he was a highly successful artist and diplomat who was knighted both in England and Spain and became a bona fide nobleman and also immensely wealthy. When she had nowhere else to turn, he offered her a place at his residence in Cologne. And thanks to Rubens, Marie finally had somewhere she could spend her later years in relative comfort and peace. And in the summer of 1642, suffering from a worsening case of pleurisy, Marie de Médicis, born a Florentine princess, passed away at the age of 67. History judges her harshly, perhaps because she represented a world that was disappearing. She was an emblem of the old medieval-style monarchy, yet in her life and death, she played a part in turning a page in history, making room for modern France and a new Europe. And next time, we will continue with the story of her children, who are now King of France, Queen of England, Queen of Spain, and the Duchess of Savoy. So please like and subscribe to continue receiving our stories from history. Leave your thoughts and suggestions in comments. Also, check out our other videos for the stories from other countries and periods. It really helps a small channel like us.